Let me just start the today's session. Pretty much in the previous classes, so we have discussed about the agile process and how we can do the test design, which is nothing but at the high level. Like we have discussed what are the possible ways we can derive, and post that like we have learned about the software testing life cycle, and then like I have explained about the agile process along with integrating with the Jira. So these are the things we have discussed. So as part of the today's session, like we are going to discuss about the types of testing, okay, and post learning the type of testing, like we are going to do the test design and we are going to integrate everything in a Jira board. Okay, so when we say the types of testing, so generally like we are having two types of testing. So one we call it as an functional testing and other we call it as an non-functional testing. Okay, so there will be often two types of testing. So one is often functional and other is often non-functional. So the functional, like we have discussed multiple times, as part of the functional testing, we are going to verify the functionality of an application. And as part of an like non-functional testing, like we are just going to verify the performance or about the security, etc. Okay, so generally like there will be always two type of team. So one is of a functional team and other is of a non-functional team. So the functional team will focus upon the functionality, whereas non-functional team will focus upon the performance and the security. So I have already told that. So as part of an SDLC, the first process is like kind of an requirement analysis, and in a requirement, so we will be having two types of requirements. So one is of a functional requirement as well as the non-functional requirement. Okay, so we need to test both functional as well as non-functional requirement. So as part of a functional testing, we are going to validate the functionality of an application, whereas in terms of a non-functional testing, okay, so like we are going to focus upon the performance of an application, about the security, the scalability, the portability, the endurance, and the responsiveness of an application. So which will be covered as part of a non-functional testing. So we are the functional testers. We are going to focus upon the functional testing. Okay. So as part of an agile process, so the first step is like we always have the sprint planning call, and once the planning call is done, so the respective sprint will start and we will be start working on the different types of user story. Like we will be splitting among ourselves and we will be working on different types of user story. So the first step is like the developer will doing the development activities, whereas like the testing team will do the test design. And post that, as I told, so the developer will deploy the code in any of the test environment. So they will be mentioning in the user story, so in which test environment they have deployed the particular code, and then we need to start the test execution. And how we are going to start the execution in the sense, like we are having like different levels of testing. Okay, so let us learn the levels of testing first, and post that like I will integrate with the methods of the testing. So different levels in the sense, so initially, right, so the first phase of testing will start from the developer side. So they are going to do the testing called as an unit testing. So this is the first phase of testing, and this unit testing is basically done by the developers. Okay, so it will be done by the developers. And why the unit testing is done by the developers in the sense, because so the unit testing will happen before deployment. Okay, so like whenever like some testing is involved, so before deployment it will be taken care by the developers. Okay, so because like as part of an actual process, so initially, so the dev will do the coding work, and post that like they will deploy the code in a respective test environment, and one and only if it is deployed in the any of the test environment, so we will be starting the testing. So they are doing the testing before deployment, which is nothing but before handovering the code to the QA test engineers. So they are doing the unit testing. Okay, so what is the purpose of unit testing? As part of an unit testing, so the developers are going to verify the logic. Okay, so logic of the code. So like whatever the logic they have written as part of the user story, so they are going to do the self review. They are going to verify each and everything, so whether the logic is correct or not, or technically we can say, so they are going to check the code module by module. Okay, so why they are checking everything module by module in the sense, so in order to ensure that it is working as expected. So one and only if the unit test is passed, so they will deploy the code in test environment. Okay, so only the unit testing will give the green signal to the developers, so to deploy the respective code in the test environment. And as part of the unit testing, so the developers will capture the evidence. Okay, so whatever the flow they have verified, so like they will be capturing all the evidence and they will be developing the developer summary. Okay, so and they will attach this developer summary in respective user story. Okay, so always the developer will attach the unit testing evidence as part of the development summary in a particular user story. So if you download the development summary, like we will get to know, so like what they have done. Okay, we will get an overview, so what the developer has validated. So now the unit testing is done. So once the unit testing is done, they are going to deploy the code in any of the test environment. As I told, so they will deploy the code in the lower environment. So let's take an example. They are going to deploy the code in the system environment. And while the developer doing the coding, so we may have completed the test design, and we will be getting reviewed from the business analyst or the test lead, and we will be attaching the approved test design in the Jira board. So I will show you like how we are going to create the test design in the Jira board and how we are going to map those things, like we can discuss at the later part. And whatever the test design we have done, we are going to start the execution. But before starting the execution, like the QA team will do the first level of testing called as an smoke testing. Okay, so when the smoke testing will happen in the sense, it will happen so immediately after the deployment. Okay, so once the deployment is done, so initially the QA will kickstart the smoke testing. So what we are going to do as part of the smoke testing, so as part of the smoke testing, so the QA engineers will check whether the basic functionality are working as expected. Okay, so what is meant by basic functionality? So each and every application will have some basic functionality. At any cost, the basic functionality should work as expected. So like we should not always say the login function as a basic functionality. Yes, login is of course a basic functionality. So one and only if the login functionality is working as expected, we can like log in and we can successfully validate the particular user story. If login is not working as expected, then the basic check is failed. Then we can't do the other phase of the testing. Okay, so basically like we are going to do the basic check. As part of the basic check, we are going to verify the basic functionality of an application. So let's randomly take any one of the application. Let's say like if you open the Amazon.in, here the basic functionality is like, so we can say, so the search functionality as an basic functionality, because like at any cost the search functionality should work as expected. So one and only if the user is able to search the product successfully, they can verify the next thing. So let's say like the Amazon is planning to introduce the pay later option. If you need to validate the pay later user story, the first key thing is like you should be able to search the product successfully, so that like you can add to cart and you can proceed to the payment page and you can verify whether the pay letter is available or not. If the basic thing is not working as expected, then how we can proceed the further phase of the testing? So that is the reason like we always do the basic check. Or else like for another example, so let's say everyone is having the bike insurance. Okay, so in a bike insurance, like we may have some policy number. Okay, and assume that like there is some fault in your bike. So whenever there is a fault in a bike, so like you will be claiming the insurance. So in order to claim the insurance, so you should navigate to their portal and you need to follow the process as a first step. So once you navigate to their portal, so you may use the policy number and you may click on the search button. So once we click on the search button, so like it should retrieve our policy details. one and only if our policy details are retrieved, so we can go ahead and we can create some claim. But if we give the policy number, if it is not retrieving any of the details, then what happened? The basic check is failed. Okay, so basically each and every application will have some basic check, which we call it as a basic functionality. So one and only if the basic functionality is working as expected, so we will be doing the further phase of the testing. Okay, so in order to start the other types of the testing, like the smoke testing is going to give us a green signal. Okay, so one and only if the smoke test is passed, like we can do the other phase of the testing. What happens if the smoke test fails? So then we need to immediately communicate to the developers, and developers will fix the issue, or they may revert the code and they will apply necessary fixes and they will redeploy the code. Okay, and again we will do the smoke testing. If the smoke testing is okay, then we will be doing the other phase of the testing. What is the other phase of the testing? So the other phase of the testing, we immediately start the system testing. Okay, so at a high level, always have in mind, so it is related to the user story. Okay, so you are going to validate the respective user story. So you may have derived n number of scenarios. So let's say like you have derived close to 10 test case or 10 test scenarios. You need to like execute this 10 scenarios. Okay, so whatever the execution we are doing related to the particular user story, we call it as an system testing. Basically we used to do the system testing in a lower environment, which we call it as a sys environment. So project to project they will be having a multiple sys environment like sys1 or sys2, etc. So which is nothing but it is going to act as an URL. So in the particular URL they will be deploying the code, and we are going to do the system testing, which is nothing but we are going to verify everything user story specific. Okay, so let's assume like we are going to deliver the product in a epic wise to the customer. So we can say epic, or we are going to deliver in the feature wise. A single epic can contain a multiple user story, and we may complete the user story either in the one sprint or in a multiple sprint. Okay, so which means like we are going to focus upon the particular user story. So whenever we are doing some validation related to that particular user story, so we call it as an system testing. Okay, but in a real time, as I told, we are going to deliver everything in a feature wise. So which is nothing but we are going to deliver everything in an epic wise. Epic is nothing but the combination of user story. So once the individual user stories are ready, so at the end we are going to combine every user story and we are going to verify the entire flow. So which we call it as an system integration testing. Okay, so which is nothing but we are going to do the epic level validation. So in a system testing, we are doing an user story level validation. Here we are doing the epic level. So which is nothing but we are combined all the user story. Okay, so combination of user story, like we call it as an integration testing. Or else for better understanding, what I can do. So like let's assume the traffic signal as an example. Okay, so let's assume like we are having the four corner traffic signal. So like in this four corner junction, okay, so they are going to place the traffic signal. Then like in the corner one, they will be placing one pole. Likewise in other pole, other corner, they will be placing the particular pole. So now what we are going to do, we are going to validate each and every pole. Okay, so we are going to verify so whether each and every pole is working as expected, which is nothing but like we are going to verify whether all three lights are present, whether it is working as expected, whether the swapping is occurring correctly. So after red the yellow should be work, after yellow the green should be navigate, and we can verify the height of the pole, we can verify the color of the pole, etc. So likewise we are going to verify each and every pole. Okay, so here we are verifying each and every pole. So which is nothing but consider this as a user story. So you are verifying each and every user story in detail. So which we call it as in system testing. Okay, so you are just doing the system testing where you are just verifying the functionality of the particular user story in depth. And once you complete the system testing, so then they will be deploy the code in the higher environment. So which they call it as an SIT. So once they deploy in the SIT, Okay, so here we are going to do the epic level validation, which is nothing but we are going to integrate everything. So which means we are going to integrate all this 4 traffic signal, and as part of the integration testing, we may like verify the internal logic, and also like we are just going to integrate everything. So when we integrate everything, so what is a new scenario we can test? So like when one signal is green, then rest of the signal should be a red color, and we are going to verify whether the swapping is occurring correctly. So we are integrated all the user story, and we are validating as a single module. Okay, so like we are clubbing each and everything, which is nothing but we are validating the entire feature by integrating everything. So just we can verify the swapping, so whether the signals are getting swapped correctly. You can just verify the duration. So what is the duration they have given? So for example, the one corner may open for 60 seconds, other corner may open for 30 seconds. So like whatever the internal logic they have set, so we are going to verify the internal logic, which is nothing but the developer will verify the internal logic, and we are going to verify the functionality by integrating each and everything. Okay, so which we call it as an system integration testing. Okay, so basically like we are going to focus upon this 4 testing. So the first step is unit. Once the unit is success, we are going to move with the smoke, and once the smoke is success, we are going to do the system testing, and once the system testing is completed, so before delivering the customer product to the customers, so we will be doing an integration testing, like we are going to combine every user story and we are going to validate in an epic level. Okay, so this is the major testing which you used to do, and we are going to relate this types of testing with the like different levels of testing. Okay, or else like post completing my session, you can just go through the Jira board where I have like added the description, so it will give the better picture. And before that, let me just cover this methods of testing. Okay, so like generally when we say methods of testing, we are having 3 types of method. So one we call it as an black box testing, and next is of an white box testing, and another it's an gray box testing. Okay, so we are having 3 methods like black box testing, white box testing, and gray box testing. So like this black box testing is kind of an input and output validation. So we are going to inject some input and we are going to verify the output. Okay, so whatever the action like we are going to perform on the application, for each and every action, like we are going to like verify the response. So how the application is reacting, so we are going to verify the result. So the result can be either the positive result or the negative result. Okay, so just we are going giving some input and we are verifying the output. We are not worrying about the internal logic. Okay, so when we are not worrying about the internal logic, so then if we see as part of the smoke testing, we are going to do something. If I search the product, it should show the search result. If I search the policy number, it should retrieve the details. So which is nothing but this smoke testing will falls under the black box testing. Whereas like in case of an white box testing, so the coding is involved. So we are going to verify the internal structure. So internal structure is nothing but we are going to verify the internal logic. When it is of an internal logic, the coding is involved. So when the coding is involved, so the unit testing, right here, obviously like we are verifying the internal logic. So the unit testing will comes under the white box testing technique. So just if you just go through the Jira board and if you see like in the black box testing, we are injecting an input, we are getting an output. So like we are not verifying the internal logic. Okay, so like without knowing the internal content, so like the inputs are fed to the system and we are just verifying the output. And once we get an output, we are just verifying whether it is an expected output or unexpected output. Whereas in case of an white box testing, like we are going to verify the internal logic, which is nothing but we are going to verify the internal algorithm. So which we call it as an white box testing. So and this white box testing is also called as an glass bots testing or clear bots testing or transparent bots testing or an structural testing. Okay, so we are having multiple names for this white bots testing. So the unit testing will falls under the white bots, like whereas the smoke testing or the system testing will falls under the black bots. Even like in a system testing, we are injecting multiple test data and we are verifying the functionality of an application. So the gray bots testing is nothing but it's a combination of black and white. Okay, so it is a combination of black and white. So the combination of black and white, we call it as an gray bots testing. So like, which is nothing but we are going to verify the functionality as well as the logic. So as I told, right, so when we are doing the integration testing, like we are going to verify the functionality as well as at the meantime, so the developer will verify the internal logic. So which is nothing but, so when we say the system integration testing, it will falls under the gray bots testing. So the gray bots testing is nothing but it's a combination of black and white. Okay, so whereas both the testers and the developers are involved in the testing. So the testers are going to verify the functionality without knowing the internal algorithm of an application. So which we call it as in black bots. And whereas like at the meantime, so the developer will verify the internal logic because they have integrated everything. So once they integrate everything, so they need to verify whether everything is integrated or not. So like even like if you say like you are sending an amount using the UPI payments, then what happened? So it is automatically deducting the like payment from your particular bank account, and then when someone send an amount, it is automatically credited to the bank account, which means some integration is involved. So basically like we are going to integrate each and every component as a single component. Okay, so in an integration testing, it will always falls under the techniques called as an gray bots testing. So okay, these are the pretty much like methods of testing which is available, and these are the types of testing which we have done, and there are n number of types of testing involved. So we are going to discuss everything one by one. Okay, and like when this testing will happen in the sense, so as I told, like once the sprint is start, okay, in an execution phase. So once we get to know the environment in the execution phase, we are going to do the all type of testing. We may do the system testing, if need we can do the integration testing. So whereas like before this test environment setup, like the developer may have completed the unit testing. So one and only the unit testing is success, they will deploy the code in the respective test environment and we can verify the things. So and then like we will be starting execution. If it is working as expected, we will pass the scenario. If it is not working as expected, then we will fail the scenario and we will be raising the defects. And in the upcoming session, like we are going to learn so how we are going to log the defects, okay, in a Jira board, and how we are going to map it with the respective user story.